By the time our therapist slid the index cards across the coffee table, my left foot had been bouncing for so long it had gone numb. "Last exercise for today," she said, in that calm voice she must practice in the mirror. "I'd like each of you to write down one secret you're afraid would end the relationship if you said it out loud. Don't overthink it. First thing that comes up. You won't read them here. This is for later, at home, when you both feel ready." She smiled like she'd just handed us a mindfulness app, not a live grenade. I stared at the blank card, the cheap ballpoint pen heavy in my hand. Across from me, my husband Ben rolled his pen between his fingers, gaze fixed on some spot over my shoulder. We were perched on opposite sides of the same worn gray couch, carefully not touching, like two people posing for a before photo. "One secret," I repeated, mostly to buy time. "One," she said. "And remember, the goal isn't to shock each other. It's to be known." Ben made a small sound, somewhere between a laugh and a scoff. "I don't have any secrets," I started to say, and then the words died in my throat. Because that wasn't true. I thought about the way I'd been resenting him for months, and not saying it out loud. How I'd been keeping a running ledger in my head. My extra shifts at the hospital, his freelance projects that never seemed to quite take off, the dishes in the sink, the emotional labor. How sometimes, when he forgot to pick up milk, or left his socks on the floor, I'd feel this flare of rage that scared me. "Write that," a voice in my head suggested. "Tell him the secret is that you're keeping score." Instead, my hand moved on its own, and wrote, "I'm afraid you'll never change." I stared at the sentence, small and mean on the card, and felt a twist of guilt. Across from me, Ben's pen hovered, then began to move in quick, jerky strokes. His hand shook. I watched the tendons jump in his wrist, the way his knuckles went white, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than frustration toward him. Worry. He finished, turned the card face down, and laid the pen carefully on top like it was a lid. "Okay," the therapist said, "seal them in the envelope. Keep it somewhere safe. When you both agree it's time, open them, read them, talk about what comes up, and remember, you can always bring it back here to unpack together." Ben slid his card into the small manila envelope. I hesitated, then added mine. It felt like dropping a stone into murky water. We left the office with the envelope between us on the seat, like a third presence in the car. Neither of us spoke all the way home. Our house looked different with the envelope on the kitchen counter. Same granite I'd wiped down 1,000 times, same stack of unopened mail, same half-dead succulent by the sink. But now there was this extra piece of paper holding something that made my husband's hands shake. "I need a shower," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Get the day off me." "Sure," I said. "Go ahead." He picked up the envelope, weighed it for a second like he might actually rip it open right then thought better of it and tucked it under a cookbook. "In case of fire, grab that first," he joked weakly. "Right," I said. "Therapy homework and tax returns." He managed a smile and disappeared down the hall. As soon as I heard the bathroom door click shut, I exhaled, my shoulders slumping. The house seemed suddenly huge and echoing. I walked over to the counter and touched the edge of the cookbook, feeling the slight bump of the envelope underneath. "One secret you're scared will end the relationship." What could he possibly have written? That he was miserable? That he wanted out? That he regretted not having kids yet, or marrying me at all? That he was still talking to that ex he swore he'd blocked? A cold dread coiled in my stomach. The shower turned on, a faint roar through the walls. I didn't mean to pull the book aside. Not really. My fingers moved without me, sliding the hardcover over just enough to expose the sliver of manila. "Don't," I told myself. "He deserves privacy." The whole point was to do this together. I picked up the envelope anyway. There was no seal, just the flap tucked in. My heart hammered. "You're a nurse," I thought. "You handle emergencies for a living. This is just paper." I opened it. 2 cards. my own cramped handwriting on the top one. I slid it aside and saw his beneath, the letters dark and decisive, like he'd pressed too hard. I've been cross-dressing in private for as long as I can remember. The words didn't make sense at first. I read them again, slowly, my brain rearranging them like puzzle pieces. Cross-dressing. In private. As long as I can remember. I stared at the sentence while the air seemed to thin, the room wobbling. This wasn't on any list of possibilities my anxious brain had conjured up. I'd been ready for, I cheated. I'm in love with someone else. I don't want to be here. But this? Images flashed unbidden through my mind. Ben in one of my dresses. Ben in makeup, in heels, in pantyhose, hiding in our closet. Ben going through my drawers when I wasn't home, touching my underwear. Ben lying every time he said he was just going for a drive to clear his head. A hot wave of nausea rolled through me. The shower shut off. I dropped the card back in the envelope, tucked mine on top of it, and shoved the whole thing under the cookbook again, my hands shaking. By the time he came back into the kitchen, hair damp, t-shirt clinging to his shoulders, my face was composed and my heart was a drum solo. "Hey," he said, opening the fridge. "Pasta okay for dinner?" "Sure," I said. My voice sounded weirdly far away. "I'm not that hungry." He glanced at me, frowning. "You okay?" he asked. "You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied. "Long shift yesterday. I swallowed. Go lie down for a bit." He put the pasta box down immediately. "If you're getting sick, I can run to the store for—" "I'm fine," I snapped, sharper than I meant to. "I just need space." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "Okay," he said quietly. "Yeah, of course." I left him standing in the kitchen staring at the pasta and went to our bedroom. I shut the door and slid down against it until I was sitting on the floor, my knees drawn up to my chest. My brain ping-ponged between anger and hurt so fast I felt dizzy. How could he not tell me? How could he walk around this house, kiss me, sit on the couch with me, and keep something this big shoved into therapy homework? Maybe because he was scared, a small voice suggested. The card literally said, "Secret you're scared will end the relationship." Yeah, I shot back internally, and maybe he's right. I thought about our wedding vows, about the first time we'd said, "I love you," in that cramped coffee shop, the foam on my latte shaped like a crooked heart, about learning each other's grocery store habits, dance preferences, stress tells. Somewhere in all that, there had been space for this. He chose not to take it. You asked him 1,000,000 times if there was anything he wasn't telling you, I thought bitterly. And apparently the answer was, yes, I like wearing your clothes when you're not around. The idea made my skin crawl. I lay awake for hours that night, curled on the edge of the bed, pretending to be asleep while he breathed steady beside me. Every little movement he made, every shift, felt foreign. Like there was a stranger hiding under my husband's skin. He didn't mention the envelope. I didn't either. The next morning, I was the one who picked it up. He was in the shower again, and I was pacing the kitchen, still raw from lack of sleep and unanswered questions. We can't go to our next session like nothing happened, I thought. I need to know if he knows I know. I need something. I took the envelope to the dining table and sat down, the chair scraping loudly on the hardwood. This time, I read both cards. Mine. I'm afraid you'll never change. His. I've been cross-dressing in private for as long as I can remember. Side by side, they felt like two ends of an argument we hadn't had yet. When he came out of the bathroom, towel around his neck, I was still there, the cards laid out in front of me. His face went white. "You opened it," he said. I met his eyes, my own burning. "Yes," I said. "I opened it." He stepped forward, then stopped, like he'd walked into an invisible wall. "How much did you—" "Enough," I said, picking up his card and reading it aloud, my voice wobbling. I've been cross-dressing in private for as long as I can remember. He flinched at hearing his secret in my voice. You weren't supposed to read that yet, he said. We were supposed to... What? I snapped. Sit on it like an egg? Wait for the therapist to tell us when it's okay to acknowledge you've been lying to me for years? His jaw clenched. I haven't been lying, he said. You wrote this down and hid it under a cookbook, I shot back. You didn't think that was relevant information for your wife? That you wear women's clothes when I'm not here? It's not about... He broke off, dragging a hand through his hair. I didn't tell you because I was terrified, Rachel. Every message I got growing up said this was sick, or perverted, or something to be ashamed of. I compartmentalized. It felt safer that way. I laughed, harsh and humorless. Oh, well, as long as you were safe, I said. Meanwhile, I'm over here wondering what else I don't know. Do you wear my stuff? Have you gone out like that? Is this some secret life you just forgot to mention? I've never gone out, he said quickly. And I've borrowed a few things. Pantyhose. A skirt once. I always put them back. I felt awful about it. Not awful enough to stop, I said. His eyes flashed. Do you honestly think I wouldn't have told you if I thought there was a world where you'd accept this? He asked. Every time we talk about anything gender-related, you shut down. You roll your eyes at guys in dresses on TV. You make jokes. I opened my mouth to argue, and then shut it again as a few comments flashed through my mind. A snide remark about a male celebrity in a ridiculous skirt. An offhand, God, pick a side, about a non-binary patient who'd confused me with their pronouns. Things I'd said without thinking, without realizing who was listening. Shame pricked the back of my neck. That doesn't excuse keeping this from me, I said, softer but still firm. We've been married 7 years, Ben. 7. How was I supposed to find out? When I walked in on you in my dress. His shoulders hunched. I didn't know how to tell you, he said. So when the therapist gave us that card, it felt like maybe a way, a step. I was going to show you. I just thought I had more time to prepare. We stared at each other across the table, our secrets between us. I feel like I don't know who I married, I admitted, the words tearing their way out. I thought I was with this straight kind of nerdy guy who wears flannel and listens to dad rock, and now I'm supposed to factor in, what, dresses? Makeup? I'm still that guy, he said desperately. I still love flannel. I still listen to dad rock. I just also sometimes like the feel of silk on my skin and the way a skirt moves when I walk, and yeah, sometimes I like how I look in pantyhose. It doesn't change how I feel about you, or my orientation. It's about feeling at home in my own body for 5 minutes. He sounded so raw, so earnest, that some of my anger ebbed, leaving exhaustion in its place. This is a lot, I said. I don't know what to do with it yet. I know, he said softly. I'm not asking you to be okay with it immediately, or at all. I just couldn't keep pretending it wasn't there. It was killing me. We brought all of that, my betrayal, his fear, the opened envelope, back to our therapist the following week. She listened quietly as we talked over each other, then slowed us down, untangling the threads. Rachel, she said at one point, your anger makes sense. You're mourning the version of your husband you thought you knew. And Ben, your secrecy makes sense too. You learned early that this part of you was dangerous. The question now is, do you want to build a marriage where this stays in the shadows, or one where it's acknowledged, even if that's uncomfortable? I stared at my hands. I want a marriage where I'm not constantly wondering what else he's hiding, I said. I want a marriage where I don't have to put pieces of myself in storage to keep it, Ben said quietly. We sat with that. Over the next few weeks, sessions became a kind of excavation. We unearthed my assumptions about masculinity, about what a husband should look like. We unearthed his shame, the boy who stole his mother's tights and then threw them away in a panic, convinced he was broken. At home, things were fragile. I flinched when he went into our closet. He watched me like I might bolt if he reached for the wrong drawer. One night, after a particularly intense session where I'd cried so hard I'd given myself a headache, I found myself sitting on the bedroom floor, back against the bed, staring at my dresses. I keep thinking of it like an affair, I admitted, voice hoarse. Like you've been sneaking around with this other version of yourself. And I wasn't invited. He sat opposite me, legs crossed, hands clasped between his knees. That's how it's felt, he said, like I'm cheating on you with me. I looked up sharply. Is that what you want? I asked. To invite me in? Yes, he said, without hesitation. If you want to be. If you don't, I'll figure out what it means to keep it separate without lying. But my dream scenario? He swallowed. You're there. Maybe you don't love it. Maybe you just tolerate it. But you're with me. Something about the way he said with me hit me in the chest. Our therapist had asked me, gently, to separate the behavior from the meaning I'd attached to it. Cross-dressing didn't automatically mean he was gay, or wanted to be a woman, or hated me. It meant he liked certain clothes. That was it. Any other meaning was layers we'd piled on. Do you get off on it? I asked bluntly, because if we were doing this, I needed all the information. Sometimes, he said, flushing. But not always. A lot of the time, it's more like putting on a weighted blanket. It calms me down, makes me feel right for a bit. Weighted blanket. I understood that. After 12-hour shifts at the hospital, my weighted blanket was the only thing that let me sleep without dreaming about alarms. I took a breath. What would it look like? I said slowly. If I came in? He blinked, hope flaring in his eyes. Tonight? He asked. Not tonight, I said quickly, and he laughed, embarrassed. Right. Yeah. Sorry. Jumping ahead. But maybe... I stared at the dresses. Maybe sometime. If we set some ground rules. If we keep talking. We did. We set rules in therapy, with our therapist's help, because otherwise I knew I'd chicken out or we'd misinterpret each other. Rule 1. No borrowing my clothes without asking. If he wanted something, we'd shop for it together or talk about specific items. Rule 2. No surprises. If he wanted to dress, he'd say so, and I'd decide if I was up for being present that time. Rule 3. If at any point it made me feel unsafe or panicky, I could say stop, and he'd listen. Rule 4. This stayed ours. Not his parents, not our friends, not social medias. We didn't owe anyone else an explanation. The first time I saw him dressed, my heart pounded so hard I thought I might pass out. We chose a night when I didn't have to work the next day. We'd just had a good session. The house was clean, the laundry folded, the bills paid. No easy distractions. I'd like to try, I said, voice barely above a whisper. If you still want me to. He looked at me like I'd handed him the moon. Are you sure? He asked. We don't have to rush. I am terrified, I said honestly. But I'm sure enough. He nodded, swallowed, and retreated to the bathroom with a small pile of clothes I'd watched him buy himself the week before. A simple A-line dress, soft and navy, a pair of sheer black tights, a cardigan, flats. I sat on the bed, fingers digging into the comforter, listening to the muffled sounds, drawer, closet, the soft stretch of elastic, a shoe thudding dully against tile when it slipped. When the door clicked open, I had to force myself to look up. He stood in the doorway, shoulders hunched, hands nervously smoothing the fabric over his hips. The dress fit better than I wanted it to. It skimmed his frame in a way that highlighted the familiarity of his body and the unfamiliarity of the clothes at the same time. The tights made his legs look different. Not feminine exactly, but softened. The flats looked almost comically small on his feet. His face, though. His face was just Ben. No makeup, no wig, no affectation. Just my husband, in a dress, breathing like he'd just run a marathon. "If you hate it," he said quickly, "say so." I don't hate it," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. I didn't love it either. Not yet. My stomach was still doing flips. But there was something oddly tender about how vulnerable he looked. How much trust it took to stand in front of me like that, knowing I could laugh or recoil or walk out. "Can I come closer?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He crossed the room slowly, the skirt swaying around his thighs. When he sat on the edge of the bed, the dress rode up a little, and he tugged it down reflexively. It was such a familiar gesture, one I'd done myself 1,000 times, that I laughed, a short, involuntary sound. "What?" he said, alarmed. "Nothing," I said, the laugh expanding despite my nerves. "You just tugged your dress exactly the same way I do." He looked down, then back up, and a small, tentative smile appeared. "It is a little short," he said. We sat side by side, our shoulders touching. His thigh pressed against mine through the tights. "How do you feel?" I asked. He let out a breath. "Scared," he admitted. "But also, like I can breathe more deeply. Like I've been holding my stomach in for 10 years and finally let go." I nodded, trying to imagine carrying that tension day in and day out. "Do you want to talk about it? Or just sit?" I asked. "Can we just sit?" he said. "For a minute? I want to savor not being alone in this." We sat. The longer we did, the less alien it felt. The dress stopped screaming wrong in my brain and started to just be. A piece of cloth. My husband's hand in mine felt the same, tights or no tights. At one point he shifted, the hem swishing against my leg, and a strange warmth bloomed in my chest. This is ours, I realized. No one else gets this version of him. No one else gets to see how his shoulders relax, how his voice drops half a register when he's not bracing against the world's expectations. Something that had felt like a threat. The idea of him dressing this way without me, in secret, started to feel like an invitation. Our therapist called it reclaiming. "Secrets fester," she said in our next session. "Shared rituals, on the other hand, can build connection, as long as both of you are consenting participants." In the months that followed, it became a thing. Our thing. Not all the time. Some weeks he didn't dress at all. Others, he'd ask on a Sunday morning, "Hey, do you have bandwidth for me trying on that new skirt later?" And I'd check in with myself and say yes or no. I helped him pick out clothes that made him feel good and fit his body. He stopped sneaking my underwear and started building his own small drawer, tucked next to his socks. Sometimes it was almost mundane. Him in a soft dress doing the dishes while we talked about our days. Other times it still hit me sideways and I'd have to step away, breathe, remind myself that the fabric on his body didn't erase the history between us. We went back to the couple's homework envelope at our 1-year therapy anniversary. Our therapist asked if we'd kept them. "Top drawer," I said, next to the batteries. We opened it together this time. My card still said, "I'm afraid you'll never change." His still said, "I've been cross-dressing in private for as long as I can remember." We looked at them, then at each other. "Well," I said, "I guess you did change. Just not in the way I meant." He squeezed my hand. "And you changed too," he said. "You let me." It wasn't neat. We still had fights about the dishwasher and finances and whose turn it was to call his mother. I still had moments where I'd look at a dress in a store and feel a pang, wondering if it would look better on him than on me. But there were also evenings when I'd come home from a brutal shift, let my scrubs puddle on the floor, and find him curled up on the couch in his navy dress, hair tousled, feet tucked under him, a blanket over his legs. He'd lift the blanket in invitation, and I'd slide in beside him, resting my head on his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady under my ear. "Hi," he'd say. "Hi," I'd reply. And in those moments, what he was wearing mattered less than the fact that he was there, fully, without hiding. That I was there too, choosing this, choosing him. The secret hadn't ended us. It had, in a messy, painful way, made us more real, more complicated, more us. Cross-dressing stopped being his shame. It became our private shorthand, our odd little ritual, our thing. And somehow, strangely, wonderfully, that felt like love.